How's it going? Welcome to episode 3 of the poker vlog. Today we'll be playing a $15,000 tournament at Doghouse Poker, which is up in Cypress. And it's a $140 buy-in and one $100 add-on at the break as well. So I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be a little bit of a drive, but I'm excited. I've never been here before. Can't wait to check it out. So without further ado, let's get to the video. So the very first hand that we're looking at today, we look down at Jack 10 offsuit in the cutoff position. So when it folds over to the hijack, he actually bets 4,000, and I decide to call just to try and keep my position. And at that point, only the small blind chooses to call. So with that being said, we're going 3 ways in position to see the flop. So now that we're going 3 ways in position to the flop, we see that the flop is 8-9-4 with 2 spades. In the small blind checks, hijack checks as well, and I decide to check again. There's no reason in betting at this point. The turn brings the king of clubs, and when the small blind checks, the hijack actually decides to bet 5,000. And so I decide to call, but then the small blind, it goes for a check raise where he raises to 25,000. So after a lot of thinking about it, the hijack ends up deciding to go all in. And although I'm open-ended, I don't think it's worth to try and wait and get lucky. So I decide to fold, and then the small blind actually decides to call really quick. It turns out they both are on flush draws with a hijack having the nut flush draw. So the ace is holding, the river brings the 3 of hearts, and we got out of it. The next hand we're looking at, we look down at pocket sevens in the cutoff yet again. And after a couple of middle position folds, when the hijack decides to limp in, I raise to 2,100, and I understand this is a pretty big raise. But these people have been playing pretty crazy, raising massive amounts with kind of any 2 cards. So when I raise, it folds around back to the hijack, and he decides to call. So we're going heads up to the flop, and when he checks in the dark, we see that the flop is Jack 10-4 with 2 hearts. So I check back, and the turn brings the ace of hearts. So he checks again, and I decide to bet 5K, even though I don't have a heart. I think this is a good turn card for me to bet, especially with the ace and jack out. So he folds, and I win a semi-decent pot. A lot of time has passed since the last hand, so now we look down at pocket threes in the middle position. And when it decides to fold around to me, I end up raising it 1,200. Which is a little bit less than my raise with sevens, but I'm trying to get some more callers and just trying to hope that I can get lucky throughout any of the streets. So when that happens, the small blind decides to call. And now that we are heads up at the flop, we see that the flop is ace jack 6 with 2 clubs. And when he decides to check, I decide to check back as well. Turn brings up 7 of hearts, and so I don't improve anymore. However, I decide to bet 2K. Hopefully my bet in the last hand can kind of work again in this situation, but it does not. He ends up calling, and now we head to the river, which is the 10 of clubs. So the club draw does end up getting there, and he checks. I decide to check quick just because I don't really feel confident in my hand. And he shows that he had king 10 offsuit for the rivered pair. So I probably could have played this better, but oh well, on to the next one. The next hand we're looking at, we look down at queen 9 offsuit in the low jack. And I decided just to limp in. I feel like if it was suited, I probably would have raised, but I'm not too worried about it. And we get the middle position, and the big blind actually decides to just check it as well. So now we are going to be heading 3 ways to the flop. The flop shows that it is queen 5-4 rainbow, so I have a top pair semi-decent kicker. I just bet 1,000, but they end up folding really quick, so at least I got to win some chips here. Just got knocked out in the first bullet. I had 8-9 of spades, and the flop came 6-7-8, all red with 2 hearts. And I lead out for 5,000. These tables have a lot of crazy action. So I lead out for 5,000, folds, big blind goes all in. And so I snap call, and he flopped a set of 5s. But turn came a board pairing 6. So he got the full house, he got there. So on to bullet number 2. So after that knockout, we rebuy and we look down at king queen offsuit in the low jack position. I decide to raise to 25, and I end up only getting the hijack player to call. So at that point, we are going heads up out of position to the flop. The flop comes king queen 3 with 2 clubs, so I hit 2 pair, and I think this is a good spot for me to lead out. So I bet 4,000, and the hijack player ends up making the call. So now we are heading to the turn, and we see that the turn brings the 3 of diamonds. So a complete brick, nothing really changes. So I decide to check, which looking back on it, this is a bad check in my opinion. Maybe I was trying to go for a check raise, but after a while he decides to check as well. So the river brings the jack of spades. So the straight does get there, but the flush misses. I assumed he was on a flush, so I decided to bet big for 15K. And he actually decides to raise it up to 30K. And so I was thinking he was trying to bluff at it with a flush draw, but he actually did end up getting there with ace-10 offsuit, river the flush. I feel like if I bet at the turn, I probably could have got him off of it, but oh well. A couple of deals later, I looked down at pocket 2s in the small blind, and because of that last hand, I lost a bunch of my chips, and I was just waiting for a good spot for me to go all in. And pocket 2s in the small blind, I feel like if I go all in for about 2,000 effective, I would be able to get either some loose calls, or maybe I could just take down the pot straight away. So I decided to go all in, and the big blind and middle position actually decide to call. So I have a chance to triple up here. The flop comes 10-6 deuce rainbow. So I hit bottom set. I am in a wonderful spot right now. Can't ask for more. When the middle position bets, the big blind folds, I show my set, and he flopped a 10. So a nice triple up here for me. So quite some time has gone by since that last hand, and I looked down at queen 7 offsuit in the small blind, and the cutoff and the button just decide to limp into the pot. And so I am getting good pot odds just to protect my hand. Big blind has been playing really passive, so I'm not expecting her to raise, and that's proven straight away when she just checks. So now when we head to the flop, we see that it is 10-9-6 with 2 spades. So it checks around pretty quick, so I'm not really worried about it, but the turn brings the jack of spades. So I pick out some outs for this straight. I don't think it's worth betting at. I check. Big blind bets 3,000. And the cutoff player, after thinking about it a little bit, ends up deciding to call. And the other two, myself included, we decide to fold, get out of there. I'm sitting here thinking about it, thinking if it's worth risking my stack, but it's not at all. So we get out of there. Now we get to this hand where we look down at ace-king offsuit in the cutoff. And I think this is a great position for me to go all in, just because I am short stack and I think I could be able to get some more value. So when the button folds, we actually get the under the gun player, who I've played with him before. He's a really decent player. The under the gun player decides to call, and the hijack decides to call as well. So now that it's time to sit back, kind of relax, and enjoy this show, we see that the flop is 9-7-5 with two clubs. So I completely miss. The other two guys, they decide to check it through. The turn brings the six of clubs, so the club draw does end up getting there. After a little bit of deliberation, the under the gun checks and the hijack player decides to bet 10,000. So after the under the gun player decides to think about it for a little bit, he does end up deciding to fold. So now that we're heads up, we see the bad news. We're drawing completely dead. He turned to the queen high flush, and since I have the ace of spades, I don't have any outs, and I'm knocked out. Thanks again for watching this video. I really appreciate y'all's support. Obviously that session didn't go as well as I had hoped, but it was fun going to a new place, playing against new players, and kind of fine-tuning my game against other people that I'm not used to seeing. So it was fun. It was a drive out there, but it was still fun nonetheless. So thanks for watching the video. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see y'all in the next one.